this is Haley Judd with Back to Our Roots. If you haven't already, you'll want to head out and check out the Lord's Day, our video on the third commandment. This is the Lord's Day going deeper. We're going to be diving a little bit into the history of the Sabbath. We've talked about the human need for rest, what constitutes rest. Then we talked about our Sunday obligation, our obligation to attend Mass every Sunday to give worship to God. And now in this going deeper, we're going to look a little bit at the history of the Sabbath, where this tradition comes from and how it became what we have today. So to start, we need to go back to the very beginning, right? Because the Sabbath has its roots in the creation story. In the creation story, we hear that God created the world over the course of 6 days, and on the seventh day, he rested. And that is where the beginnings of our Sabbath comes from, that even God rested, that there was a rhythm to his work of work and rest. And from that, we have the beginnings of the tradition of a Sabbath. This idea was further formulated and came to take shape with the people of God in Israel. After they were freed from slavery in Egypt, the Exodus we call it, and they were living out, and God was giving them rules, and he came to give them the 10 Commandments through Moses. And one of them was remember to keep holy the Sabbath day. And the Sabbath became this day where they rested. They didn't do the work that they did on all other days, to specifically remember the things that God had done for them. It was a chance for them to remember how he had freed them from slavery in Egypt, how he had been there for them. And it was a symbol of the covenant that God had made with Israel, that he was their God and they were his people. And accordingly, they took one day to honor and worship him and remember all that they had done. And this practice of the Sabbath became a crucial part of the Jewish faith. For those of you who have joined us for Emmaus in the past, last year we talked about the world that Jesus was born into. And we talked about how if you look at the Old Testament, there's all this history leading up to Jesus, and then all of a sudden there's a 400-year break between the last of the prophets and Jesus coming. And it was a time of silence to these people of God, the Israelites, who were used to hearing from God regular and receiving direction. There was this long period of silence before Jesus came. And we talked about how the Jewish people didn't know what to do. They didn't know what God was asking of them. And so there became this focus on the law. Okay, we know that God has given us these commandments, these laws, so we're just going to follow them because that's what we know we're supposed to be doing. And that led to a rigid following of the law that we start to see in the New Testament with groups like the Pharisees, that they started to put the law truly above God and above all else. And that brings us to this continual battle between Jesus and the Pharisees in the New Testament, where Jesus does something on the Sabbath, and the Pharisees say, "What? You're breaking the law. We're not to do things on the Sabbath. It's our day of rest." Jesus healed someone. There's a story where he and his disciples were just picking grain and eating it while walking through a field, and the Pharisees continually accuse him of breaking the Sabbath. And there's this beautiful line in the Gospel of Mark where Jesus says, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." And I want to explain that a little bit. Okay, so the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The Pharisees were basically preaching that God needed us to obey the Sabbath, right? That we needed to obey the Sabbath to honor God, which in some ways is true. But what Jesus was saying is that's not what it's really about. It's that God knew that we needed rest. He knows that we need time set apart to worship him. That's what we were built for. It's how we're designed. And so he gave us the gift of the Sabbath. And so Jesus started to turn things on their head, to say the Sabbath is for good works. It is to celebrate all the joyful things. That we should enjoy the Sabbath because it's a gift that God gave us that we were designed for. And so there starts to be this shift. We've talked before about how Jesus took the commandments and drove them into the heart. He gave them a deeper meaning. And here we see him doing it again with the Sabbath. And so more than that, we see the fulfillment of the Sabbath coming in Jesus' resurrection. Now, I jumped over this detail, but you might know the Sabbath in Judaism was practiced on Saturday. And so when they were keeping holy the Sabbath day, that was Saturday. But Jesus, as we know, fulfilled the law. He didn't change it. We've talked about this in Emmaus too, that fulfill doesn't quite mean change. It's as if there is a painting that's not quite finished. And Jesus comes in and he finishes the painting. And in doing so, he changes it, but it's still the same picture. And so Jesus fulfilled the Sabbath in that he rose from the dead on Sunday and he instituted the Lord's Day. This day of celebration, of new life, of a new faith that was born from Jesus rising from the dead. And so we acknowledge our Sabbath on Sunday. And this has been practiced since the very beginnings of the church. I'd like to read you a quote from Ignatius of Antioch. He's one of our church fathers who formed so much of what we believe and do today. And he wrote this back in 110 AD, so 110 AD, really close to the time of Jesus and his disciples and the writings of the New Testament. He said this: "Those who were brought up in the ancient order of things, the Jews, have come to the possession of a new hope, no longer observing the Sabbath, but living in the observance of the Lord's Day, on which also our life has sprung up again by him and by his death." So basically saying that while we don't obey the old Jewish Sabbath, that was about the Exodus and everything, we keep that and we have the fulfillment of it in the Lord's Day, in honoring the day that Jesus rose from the dead, while still obeying our need for rest and our need to give worship to God. The Sabbath is all about God giving his people what they need, this time to grow ourselves, to grow closer to him. And it's beautiful to see how it's changed and grown throughout the history of the people of God, of which we are a part. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time in our Going Deeper.